And we are live. What's happening? What's happening, man? Just
Hey,
want to thank everybody for joining us for another episode of Motivation and Mindset. I am James Morris, President and CEO of TMC Solutions. I'm here with my brother.
yes, I'm Jermaine Morris. I'm a coaching consultant based out of Sacramento, California. I have a practice based around a DISC assessment, which I like to highlight under the premise of self-awareness without judgment, and just kind of helping us understand how we are, not through the lens of good, bad, right, or wrong, but just is. And so that way we can properly look at what we're doing and make the necessary changes if we deem we need to.
Right, man, great and great to have you here with me. Always good to see you and connect. Today, well, something I always like to start the show is with a little bit of disclaimer. You know, we're not doctors, we're not lawyers, we're not prescribing anything. We're two brothers that are just discussing the normal things that come up in life. We're hoping that we will say something that will help ourselves, help each other, and maybe somebody listening may hear something that can be of a help to them. So we're not trying to sell nothing. We're not trying to put anything on anybody else. Take it for what you will. So that being said, and that out of the way, I love the fact that we seem like we're doing a pretty good job of coming up with some very interesting topics. And what we're going to talk about today a little bit is dealing with failure. Dealing with failure is something that we all have to endure. There's nobody out there that hasn't dealt with failure. And I'll say this: if you tell me you've never failed, I'm gonna tell you you've never done anything. We've never done anything. So, what Jermaine and I like to do is, I'm a business owner. I own a distribution fulfillment company. Where we're supporting some of the largest distribution companies on earth. I won't say their names. I'm not giving them any free advertising today. And I own a national staffing company. So if you're somebody that's looking for a job, we help people find a job. If you're companies that need people, we bring people to companies. But so I usually like to take the business approach. How do I deal with these different topics within my own business? And then what I like is Jermaine will then flip the coin and he talks about really just the personal life outside of business, right? On a more personable basis. Sometimes we touch on family relationships, friendships, things of that nature. So I'm just going to jump right in. We talk about dealing with failures. The one thing that when I started my own company and I left corporate America, hard to believe now, it's been 13 years since I left the comfort of my desk in my corner office to pursue this drug called entrepreneurship. And, I feel very blessed and fortunate that I haven't had to go back, although I've thought about it many times. And one of the things that many, many people told me, whether it was my bankers or my business coaches or even my mentors, they told me you need to expect to fail 1,000 times minimum, and just like with growing up, we understand that we're going to fall down. And I think on that Rocky movie, say it's not how many times you get knocked down, but it's how many times you get back up and you continue to move forward. You continue to fight. You continue to work to achieve your dreams. And so, if I were to just talk about in the most basic sense of my business, I can think about the end of 2018, 2019, 2020 when COVID hit, right? And at the time, we had 7 offices around the United States: Texas, Indiana, Kentucky, Wisconsin, Ohio. We've got people manning all those offices. We've got customers that are booming. Cool things were going on. We were supporting some of the launches of the new iPhones that had just come out at the time. So we got people in factories packaging and shipping and receiving. And then all of a sudden, COVID hit. The government starts to mandate that anything that wasn't essential had to be shut down. So we went from a situation where we had, almost 600 employees to where we had 150 employees, including corporate staff.
Yeah.
So it's whether we say it's your fault, not your fault, whatever, it was my problem. Well, when I went into 2020, I had a budget, right? A budget is Here's what I expect to earn. Here's what I expect to spend. And once we do the gazintas and the gazatas, at the end of the day, I'm going to have a certain amount of profit at the end of the year. Yeah. Well, when we went through that, we missed it. Like, we weren't even in the same zip code. I don't even think we were in the same city, state. So now we're thinking about, okay, our business has died by about 70%. We don't have the revenue coming in that we previously had. So as a business owner, you can shake it and bake it the way you want. We failed. Okay. We were failing. So then I have to come and start making some decisions. Okay, I've been knocked down. So what do I do about it? You know, do I do nothing? Because sometimes it's easy to sit in the corner and wait for the storm to pass and hope everything's going to be all right. I don't really believe in that strategy. So some of the things that we had to do to overcome failure, and some of the, sometimes the medicine feels as bad as the cure, right? You think you drink that castor oil and they say it's going to make you feel better, but it's rough going down. So one of the things that we did was we closed our largest office in Indianapolis, Indiana. Okay. Well, to me, that felt like a failure. We laid off, over 150 great people, managers, supervisors, quality folks, people that have been with me for years, but we shut down that operation. It felt like a failure, but in doing so, we removed all that cost. Yeah. Right. So we didn't have the profit, but we didn't have the cost. So, now those things go to zero versus negative. $1 million we just lost in Indianapolis. We closed a second office in Indiana, a smaller office, but it had 100 people in it. Right. We came out of this actually stronger than we had been. Our sales, so the top line had dropped dramatically, felt like failure, but the bottom line was actually not changing very much at all from what we planned because we reduced our costs and we learned a lot about our business. And my point of kind of walking through the failure, right? The failure that it wasn't my fault. It might have been beyond my control, but it wasn't what happened to TMC as a company. It's how did TMC respond to it? Now, because we carried ourselves with dignity and respect, because we kept our heads up high, because we continue to execute at a high level, we actually started to reinvent ourselves and we started doing things that we hadn't done before. Okay, we can't put a bunch of people here, but we're experts. So can we start doing management consulting? Can we start doing advising? Can we start doing coaching? Can we become advisory? Well, we started to figure out that, you know what? Instead of having 100 people in one building, we can put 10 consultants in another building. We're making 5 times the revenue and 10 times the profit. So it was the pivot, right? It was the power of the pivot. And so, what I like to tell people is, when you think you failed, we're all going to fail. If you have an expectation that you're never going to fail in business, in life, I don't care how great Michael Jordan is. I saw a whole thing where he said, in my career, I've missed over 10,000 free throws. I've missed over X number of shots, right? But he's still, we can argue the GOAT or one of the GOATs, right?
Yeah. So I would ask you a question then. So, because that's a great for a business structure that it can make adjustments and, like I said, shift people around and open up new departments and reinvent yourself. But as the boss, while the ship is taking on water, like where is it? Because I get as a business structure, as a math problem, I can sit there and say, okay, I've got X amount of people who require X amount of dollars, and I'm losing X amount of dollars over X amount of time. And you can formulate where I can cut costs to make this work to keep the ship afloat. But when you go home at night and you realize that I was growing and I had goals of going from 7 plants to 10, I was making X amount to making, 200% more or 30% more, whatever. Now I got to say it. Now I have to reduce and I've got to shrink and I've got to lay off. What's that process like? Not a TMC process, but what would you think was like a person, like your process into, okay, I gotta go. I gotta let these people go. I gotta downsize my business. I'm not gonna hit these goals. I'm taking on water.
Yeah. Well, this is where you really have to tap into your leadership skills.
Okay.
So, to answer the first question, I'm going to be very open and transparent. When you sit down with your finance and your operations and your HR team, and you're having some very rough dialogue, raw dialogue saying, guys, if we don't shut down our Indianapolis site, we're not going to survive.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to make payroll. We got people sitting at home. We got people out there, and there were things that we started to do. So I went home and I said, what are the options available to me? Right. There were Paycheck Protect, the PPP stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of negative connotations about it, but what I will tell you is the first thing that we did was we went to our bank, and we used Truist Bank. I'll do a shameless plug. The market president is Kai Jones.
Okay.
He was with me when I started my company, and I called Kai up and I said, man, I heard something about a PPP loan, and is there a way that TMC can take advantage of this so we can keep our doors open? And Kai and his team came to me and he says, you got some options. Well, we're able to pay hundreds of people 60 to 70% of their pay for a certain amount of time, which allowed companies an opportunity to recover. It allowed people an opportunity to survive. Now, the hard part was they got so used to getting that money. When we got busy again, nobody wanted to come back to work. But that's another discussion for another time.
Yeah.
But as a business owner, I go through phases, right? Some people call them the 7 stages of grief almost.
Okay.
I go through the normal, I panic and I become worried because I don't know what I'm going to do. And the reason I feel that way is these 5 or 6 or 700 employees, I'm thinking about them like they're my children. Okay. And I've got an obligation to not just them, but to their families and to their mortgage company and to the light company and to Kroger to make sure that we can feed these people.
Yeah.
And so I knew that to go home and do nothing, because again, I'm degreed. I've got years and years of corporate experience. Yeah. I'd be lying if I didn't say, you know what, I don't need this anymore. I'm going to just sharpen up my resume and I'm going to go back to corporate America.
Okay.
But in my heart of hearts, I knew that's not really why God put me in this position. I knew that I needed to do something to salvage us. Okay. So what we did was we found out what resources were available. Okay. And we did the PPP loans. And then there were some people that we had a little bit of cash. They were at the end. And so we severed some people. We said, let's part company and let's decide that it's just going to be over. So we let some people go. We furloughed some people, but we were worried. But we started figuring out what are some other things that we can do. One of the things that we did for Kroger, and I see one of my guys just sent something that said HEB over Kroger, but he just sent a comment. But one of the things that we did was we started managing COVID tests for Kroger. Okay. Now that opportunity would have never come up had COVID not arisen, but we kept 100 people working because we brought in 700,000 COVID tests into our warehouse, and we distributed them through the Kroger warehouse, through the federal government, to making sure those 2 free COVID tests that you got, made sure that America got those. We started doing whatever we had to do to keep our business going. We actually started a business where we were getting Ziploc bags for the state of Michigan, and we were putting 5 masks, the mask that everybody was wearing, into a bag, slapping an address on it, and every taxpayer in the state of Michigan got one. We had to reinvent ourselves to keep our doors open.
So what I would say is, so because maybe the question I'm getting to, so I get the TMC part.
Yeah.
So for James Morris, when he goes home, is it okay? Let me bounce. Am I fired up to bounce back out of this problem? Am I just contemplating? Let me get minds around me and see what they think. Is it I'm trying to stay above water? Is it I see this as an opportunity to bounce back and be good? Like I get the TMC practices because I understand for the people who are like, who are in business and corporate, and they're like, okay, the business model plan makes sense for the progression and the bottom line. But for you, because like I said, like as a person, and even not even just specifically your own emotions, but even the conversations you were having with in the room, or other business owners who were taking on water, and some of them that didn't, that couldn't bail enough of it out.
It's strange, but the attitude, and again, as my baby brother, you know me as well as anybody. I've got a sick competitive nature.
Okay.
And I'm very realistic, and I understood the challenge that was facing us, right? We were facing bankruptcy. We were facing closure. We were facing, we laid off over 300 people, as I mentioned. It was going to be tough, but I never at any point, and I mean this, and I don't say this arrogantly or being verbose, I never felt like I was going to lose a game.
Okay.
I'm the guy that, it's 4th and 99, and we got time for one play, and I'm going to be the guy that I want to heave the ball down the field and throw the Hail Mary, very confident that somebody's going to catch it and we're going to score a touchdown. Yeah. I never, ever felt like we were going to lose the game. So that mindset is really what drove me. Now, there's times when I got at home, and I tell you, I got on my knees and I was crying and praying to God, saying, God, I don't want to fail. Yeah. Like, I don't want to fail these people. I don't want to fail myself. I don't want to lose my house. And I went through times where I literally went to the bank, and I mentioned my banker, Kai Jones, and I says, I think I need to get a second mortgage on my house to make sure that we stay afloat. And he looked at me and he says, we ain't doing it. You need to come up with another solution, but we're not going to put your house, mortgage your house to keep your business open. Come up with something else. Well, I'm very glad that he did that. Okay. One was a show of faith, but he was also saying, you're being emotional right now. Wipe your nose, dry your eyes, and go figure it out. Yeah. And that's what we did. Another thing is I got a great team, right? I've got a great finance person. I got a great operations person. I got a great HR person. So we came together. Yeah. And the first thing I told them, hey, guys, we're winning. Okay. We're not quitting. We're not going out of business. We're not shutting down. We got to get lean and mean. Okay. And there's things that I did, like there's times when I didn't take a salary because I felt like we need to keep that money in the bank in case we run out.
Okay, so speaking to that part, because I think that, so like you said, failure is apparent for everybody. Doesn't matter what you do. At some point, you're going to take one on the chin. Life is going to catch you slipping at some point. And so, in your opinion, do you think that, so the people who didn't make it out, now granted everybody's circumstance was different, or the people who were on the ropes, how much would you attribute the people who made it to the other side due to mindset?
So it's so funny because, again, I'm looking at the comments that are coming in, and, I appreciate it. And I want everybody, please continue to contribute. It's like the name of the show. Yeah. It's motivation and mindset. I feel like, attitude is altitude, and I can go through all the cliches. Yeah. If I thought we weren't going to make it, we wouldn't have made it. But the fact that failure wasn't even an option. Okay. Quitting, wasn't an option. I knew that if I could just keep churning my legs, I was going to keep moving forward. Okay. And if I hadn't had the right mindset, because, so much of success and failure is a choice. Yeah. Sometimes we just quit, yeah. And so many times I can tell you it felt like miracles because the day after I thought about quitting but decided to go on, something special would happen. Okay. A customer would call and says, hey, we got a special project. Can you help us? Absolutely. And I did things like I called my customer and says, I know you usually can pay me in 30 days. I'm going to need to get paid in 10 because we need the cash. I'm going to tell you something else that we did, and it's a little bit off topic. We looked within our organization. And while I pride myself on being lean and mean, we realized that we were a little fat in some areas. And we went in and we were like, oh, we have, and I'll just use it as an example, we got 2 or 3 people in HR. Do we really need that many people in HR? Right? We invested in technology 2 years ago. So everybody's got these automated processes. So we started looking and finding out we had people working for us that had part-time jobs and we didn't even know it. So what we did was we allowed those people to go other places and get full-time jobs. Okay. We embraced technology which allowed us to reduce our overhead costs, which created survival. Now that things are back to normal, we still run the same lean model. So we're stronger now than we were before. But to answer your question, it was about what was going on here.
Okay.
You know, we always say it's what's going on in the heart, right?
Yeah.
But as soon as you think you're done, you're done.
Okay.
You're done. It's over.
Because I would say that, so keeping with that model. So for most people who say they don't run, a major corporation, they got fired. They were a busser at a local diner. They got laid off from mopping floors.
Sure.
They were, or maybe didn't lose their job. Maybe their relationship ended. Maybe, whatever life's pursuits that they were after. And so they took one on the chin, and they have to fall back and they have to reassess. And you start beating yourself up, and you start, trying to maybe act like it didn't hurt you as much as it did, or you try to blame the circumstances. It was COVID. It was COVID's fault. We went, okay, well, is it COVID's fault that I was carrying an extra 30% of labor that I could have,
been going to the bottom line a long time ago?
Maybe COVID exposed it. Maybe this new supervisor exposed it. Maybe my girlfriend exposed it. But this was an issue I already had, if they were here or not. And so I like to speak to the mindset part, because the logistics are great, like I said, for the business people. Sure. who are finding themselves in that space now, or who may find themselves in that space one day. But I was speaking to, like, when you're there, because somebody says attitude is the key in this economy. Right now, some folks is on the ropes. Yeah. Right now they're on the ropes financially. Cost of everything is through the roof. They're on the ropes romantically. Their relationship is, one, not taking the trash out from World War III. Somebody's sick. They're sick. Like, something's going on. Where they're trying to minimize these L's that they're taking. So I know you speak to business and I speak to the personal, but what would you say, in your opinion, is a translatable correlation from that which you did mindset in business to that which somebody would do mindset in life?
I like that. I like that. What I really think is, and I was just looking at something last night, and it was talking about relationships.
Okay.
Right. And, that's not my strength. I don't usually talk on relationships, but I like to listen. But what I was listening to was, people say it. The lady was saying that someone told her, I'm not attracted to my partner anymore, and I don't think I love him anymore. So because of that, I'm going to leave. Okay. Well, and she started to break it down to, like, well, first of all, the attraction, physical attraction, and the love, those are two separate things. Yeah. Right. And as she started to get into it, she started to really talk about choices. Okay. And one thing I would tell people is, you got to be willing to make some choices. And sometimes you have to be willing to change everything. Right. You got to be willing to change everything. If something's not working, right, taking out the trash, making the bed, ironing the clothes, washing the dishes, if that's killing the relationship, right, if those are the things that are creating a failure, yeah, you have to now ask yourself, am I willing to change those things to prevent this from failing? Yeah. Right. That's what we did in business. Am I willing to lay off somebody that's been with me 10 years? Am I willing to replace my operations person with a stronger person? And I'm willing to get rid of this supplier that I've been buying boxes from and start buying them from this supplier because they have better quality and a slightly better price, and they can get them to me a little bit quicker. Am I willing to become a consultant instead of just a staffing company? You have to be willing to alter, right? I was writing the book that I'm working on right now, talks about the imposter syndrome, which a lot of people talk about in a negative connotation. Yeah. You got the imposter syndrome, and I think I've got it. And in the book, we talk a lot about sometimes we become a chameleon. And it's easy to be critical of the chameleon, like, oh, you code switch. Or when you get around these people, you talk a certain way, but when you're around your boys in the hood, you talk another way or you act another way. But when I look at it, do you have the ability to adapt? Because a chameleon isn't a bad animal. They adapt to their surroundings as a means of survival. So you got to, as a business owner, the way I treat my distribution fulfillment clients are much different than the way that I approach my consulting clients,
Okay.
which are much different from the way that I interact with my staffing clients.
Okay.
Right? They're very different. I had to be willing to adapt. I used to treat everybody the same because I came out of corporate America. I had a book, which was a standard set of policies and procedures of how we did things, and there was no latitude. Every day I had to get up, I put on a dark blazer, a white shirt, and a tie, and every day for 12 years, that's how I showed up for work because that was the dress code.
Yeah.
Well, now I've learned that I need to be whoever I need to be. And I'm not talking about being fake, but I am talking about the ability to adapt to your surroundings. And I'm also talking about you have to have that willingness to change. Like I use the term pivot.
Yeah.
Like you got to be able to pivot. And if you can't pivot, you're going to lose. You're going to get left behind. There's something that a story that I can remember when I was doing my master's. We talked about Gateway computers. I don't know if you remember Gateway.
Yeah.
The box and it had the spots on it that looked like a cow.
Yeah. I remember them.
Gateway,
commercials, at least.
Yeah. Gateway was an awesome company, right? And they had the same model as Dell, where they would configure every computer to order, right? And they were doing great. And then Dell got a little fancier and a little quicker, and HP got a little fancier and a little quicker. And then Apple started doing things.
Yeah.
And Gateway says, we did it a certain way. We've been successful, and we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep making orders of one. We're not going to do any mass production. We're not going to do like Ford. Your car can be any color you want as long as it's black.
Yeah.
Where's Gateway today?
Yeah.
They said, we're not laying people off. We're not cutting back. We're not cutting salaries. We're not cutting bonuses. Where's Gateway today? He's an excellent example of somebody who refused to pivot.
So stay with that, because I think there's twofold for people who are coming upon those crossroads when you're in the free fall phase of failing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in order to pivot, you have to have a planted foot.
Right.
And if that's not the case, because like the pivot is a 90-degree angle, 45-degree angle, but one of those feet is fundamentally planted, and then you're changing course. But you can't pivot in free fall.
Right.
So I think in some cases, before we look to what's the next move, I need to stop myself from falling now. Like whatever I'm doing, like I'm just made you just have to hit the brakes, like not try to figure out what's my next step going to be. Stop is my next step.
Yeah. You know what's so important, and it's going to sound like I'm oversimplifying.
Yeah.
And when you talk about planting, we talk about in basketball that plant foot.
Yeah.
If you don't know where you're at, how the heck can you know where you're going?
Yeah.
You got to be able to stop, be still, understand where you're at. And then let's talk about where we need to go.
Yeah. And the second part I would say, because a lot of times, like we were talking before we got on, like Einstein's theory of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Yeah, and that one gets used a lot. But if you're under the argument of perseverance, which is to continue upon the same path regardless of difficulties, previous failures, or adversity, there will be those who lean on the fact that I'm just practicing perseverance as opposed to practicing insanity. So to say that, why didn't you change course? Why didn't you pivot? Well, perseverance says, I failed 99 times, but I can be successful on the 100th. Insanity says 99 failures, of course you're going to fail on the 100th. But if we lead to the mindset,
right?
It didn't matter if I failed 99 times. So for those people who were like, yeah, but I know this, I'm about to break.
Yeah.
I know if I just keep chipping away, I know I swung 100 times at this thing and I'm still hitting granite, but I know swing 101, I'm going to hit diamonds. And someone's telling me to stop because 99 swings didn't get me a diamond. What's the difference in that space? Because if you talk to a lot of really in business, a lot of successful people, they did mortgage their house and then it kicked in. They did lose their wife and then it kicked in.
Right.
They did they were, I was down, it was Dwayne Johnson's famous thing. I was down to my last $7.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And then it broke. So for those people who were in that space of I just believe, and I believe so heavily, even though I'm taking L's across the board, is there a different space for those people, or in your opinion? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, here's what I think you have to keep in mind, though.
Okay.
Having a plan,
yeah,
right? And you're walking down this path, right?
Yeah.
Now, this path may be 10 miles long.
Yeah.
And for somebody to come to you in mile 5 and say, why are you continuing to walk down this path? You haven't hit the finish line yet.
Yeah.
Well, then you can say, listen, I'm not done executing the plan yet. Okay. You're coming to me prematurely telling me, hey, you keep walking mile after mile after mile, but you haven't hit the goal.
Okay.
Well, that's different than I've run 10 miles and I didn't lose any weight. So then I ran another 10 miles and I didn't lose any weight. Okay, it's not what you're doing, but it's how you're doing it.
Okay.
Right? So for the person that's running 10 miles to lose weight and they're not losing weight, it's not what you're doing, but it's how you're doing it.
Okay.
Maybe you're running the 10 miles a little too slow.
Okay.
Or maybe it's because you're not in a calorie deficit and you're running 10 miles and you're going home eating cake.
Okay.
Right? I just keep running 10 miles, but I'm not making any progress. I'm going to the gym and I'm not getting in shape. Well, people are like, well, you keep doing the same thing. Well, maybe you need to change your workout.
Okay. So the only thing I would look the difference of that is because business. So because we'll stay in that realm because that's where we're for the people talking. There's not the same. You can work at something and not make money. Though it's not a flawed business plan. Correct. It just takes time. So correct. If I do 100 push-ups every day, there's going to be a difference because that's just how the body and muscle works. There's no way I can sit there. If you look at me and there's zero change, okay, then you're not really doing 100 push-ups every day. Even if you're eating cake every day.
Up to a point. But if you do 100 push-ups a day for 6 months, when you get to month 7, those 100 push-ups are going to come easy, and you're going to get to the point where you've reached the maximum potential what that workout will do for you.
So then the question, what I would look at, because I like the conversation. So where do you get the, because what's the guy, where do you reach, where would somebody be at where I should be throwing in the towel on my way of doing things? Is there, in your opinion, because like I said, there are some people who are on a path. The path isn't wrong. The process isn't wrong. You just haven't done it long enough. Right. It's not you're not running and eating cake. You're doing this correctly. It just, your mind said it should take me 10 miles. The plan, you came up with 10 miles, but the plan was actually 13. Maybe the flaw was in the formula.
The flaw was in the formula.
But it wasn't in the practice.
Correct.
There were a lot of accidental successes.
Yeah.
And I don't mean because they didn't put in work. It's because they meant to have $1,000 company and ended up with $100,000 company. I just wanted to make enough money to get by. Now all of a sudden I'm the number one, whatever and whatever. They got way more than they actually shot for.
I think what's missing is, and I usually am on the side of we need to push harder.
Okay.
I tend to think that most people don't work hard enough.
Okay.
I really think that most people don't push hard enough. But I'm going to be a little contradictory right now.
Okay.
Understand what failure means.
Okay.
Because there's times, you talked about the 13-mile track, and at mile 10, people are getting discouraged.
Yeah.
We need to, first of all, how are we defining failure? You need to understand what failure really is. Because sometimes I've been through times where I felt like I failed, but the reality is I just hadn't finished yet. I just hadn't finished the plan yet. And if I stay encouraged, and continue to persevere, then I'm be like, man, I almost quit 3 miles ago.
Yeah.
I almost quit hammering that granite or where that gold was underneath. I almost stopped 20 strikes ago because I thought I was finished. That's different. Because sometimes we think we failed and we didn't actually fail. It's just that we didn't finish.
Okay. So staying there and taking that to marriages, friendships, interpersonal relationships, to where we think that the marriage failed,
Yeah.
the friendship fell apart, whatever, however terminology, but that thing is no longer in existence. I would be interested in wondering how many people in hindsight could look back and say my marriage didn't fail. We just didn't finish. We were in the middle of transition. We were in the middle of change. We were in the middle of different phases of life. Things were realigning in our goals and our pursuits. And we just gave up before we saw the change through.
You know what? You just hit on something that I think is so powerful. When I first, you know, during my college days, college years, I had a guy that I was working with. I didn't like him very much, and he was one of those trust fund babies,
Okay.
right? But we were working together because Grandpa said you still have to have a job.
Yeah.
And I used to listen to him, and one thing he used to say is, my grandfather always told me that the key to success is to just stick with it. If you stick with it long enough, you're going to figure out how to make it work. So if I can relate that to this conversation, and again, I'm the last guy to speak on relationships and marriage and all that stuff. But what I do believe is, to your point, I bet you 50% of the marriages that have failed, or whatever the number is, relationships, boyfriend, girlfriend, my job that I hate.
Yeah.
If we had made some modifications and hung in there, matured, focused, I think we could have worked it out. Right. But I think in this microwave society that we live in, people get tired.
Yeah.
And the first time that the intimacy isn't there, or she gains a little weight, or I lose my job and I don't have the money coming in that I used to come in, you're like, oh, this is not working for me. And then we leave the relationship, and then we meet each other 5 years from now. And it's like, oh, yeah, I did find another job and I'm making great money now.
Yeah.
And, what those people start to realize is, and I miss you.
Yeah.
And I miss us. And we had a really good relationship. It's just we went through that bad patch. You have to be willing sometime to go through that wilderness.
Yeah.
To walk over those hot coals, and endure that temporary pain to, to get where you need to be. Somebody just chimed in. I saw a couple of really good comments today. One just said, I've learned more from failure than from success.
Yeah.
And I actually have too. I try to learn from my mistakes. And I like this one from, it's a familiar name, but popcorn results get cold quick.
Yeah.
I've never heard that one before, but I am going to steal it and use it. And I do believe that, right? Temporary fixes. And when I think about the temporary fixes, what I think about are the insincere attempts to say, okay, I'm gonna quit doing this, but you don't really mean it, right? And so before you know it, you find yourself going back to doing some of the things that you were doing, right? And so I know even, I like to always relate these back to myself. As I've gone through coaching and counseling and therapy, one thing I've been doing is, instead of just having corrective actions in my life, I've added a word to it called permanent. I'm trying to make permanent corrective actions.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to first start off with root cause analysis. Why am I doing what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Which I find, talking to you as my coach and counselor, and I have an outside counselor, but we talk about root cause. Why do you feel the way that you do? Why are you doing the things you're doing? Now that we understand it, now how do we fix it permanently?
Yeah.
And that's not to say we'll ever be perfect, right?
I get that.
But we're going to fail. But you got to figure out how to get up and keep coming forward. Keep trying to improve. Now, if we're okay with failing and sleeping on the ground, and being drunk or being ugly or being poor or being, that's different.
Yeah.
right? That's just a choice, right? I don't even know if that's failure. I mean, I may look at somebody and say you're a failure, but I'm looking at me like I'm living my best life.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
stress free and happy. So that's my thoughts. You know, it's so funny. I feel like I don't usually hog the conversation this much, but I can tell you I know a lot about failure.
Yeah.
Right.
I think so. I think because business gives you a tangible benchmark for success or failure. Our goal was 200,000. We hit 150. We failed to reach our goal. Goal was 200,000. We hit 500,000. We succeeded our goal.
Yeah.
Like a math problem.
Yeah.
Life and dealing with people, it's hard to say, well, my first marriage failed, but after that marriage, I met the woman I'm with now. We've been married 20 years. Okay, well, did I fail in my first marriage, or did I was just in a situation that wasn't for me, and that allowed me the opportunity to be in the one I'm supposed to be in? So this was not necessarily a failed relationship; it was just a part of the process.
Yeah.
And so there's not the necessarily the definitive, tangible A to B math problem,
Mm-hmm.
personally to say if something failed or not. Even like bad outcomes. It was jokes sometimes that, little kids, elementary school, usually best friends were forged on a fight by the bike rack.
Yeah.
Two kids who didn't get along at first, then you go and fight after school, and then now you're all the best friends 30 years later. Well,
Yeah.
was that fight, was that a failed attempt at forging a friendship, or was that just part of the process that created the bond that you now still carry on today?
Right. Right.
But I think for people who are in those spaces of failure or failing to whatever their definition is, number one, just so on the personal side, feel your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of whatever that is, the confusion, the anger, the frustration, the disappointment, allow yourself that. Now, what you do with those feelings is going to be important. But I think that owning those feelings, I need to feel in relationships so I can appreciate. Yeah. And so for you, how you're saying, like, because you're competitive, like, all right, I'm losing right now. Let me use that as fuel to propel me towards something else. I just think that's important for people to feel that, and then to be open to making changes.
Yeah.
But no, I've enjoyed this. I think it's when you see people, because you're successful in business by any litmus test. If you look at for where you started to where you are to annual progressions, ain't pocket watching, but you're running a successful business. So to hear some of the mindset attached to, okay, well, what happens when it's not a winning season? I think that's important, because everybody's like, well, yeah, you're winning because you went to this school, or these people, or you've been doing this long. Okay, you're kind of rolling off of your previous successes. But what happens when it's not your season?
Yeah.
And I think that those are good things for people to hear and take away from.
Yeah. Well, I guess, excuse me, in wrapping up, there's a couple things, I like to take my notes and kind of regurgitate them at the end. So a couple things that I'll throw out there is, and I may have mentioned it in an earlier show that we did. I was watching this Netflix series called Maid, MAID. It was about a young lady. It's a rough story.
Okay.
But her goal is ultimately to be a writer.
Okay.
And while she's in a shelter for battered women, she gets an opportunity to teach a class, a creative writing class. And the short version is she's in this class and she tells everybody to, and these women have been through, you name it. Again, it's a domestic abuse shelter. They've been through the storm and rain. But she tells everybody to write down the best day of your life. It can be about anything. And so I did that.
Okay.
I'm watching the show, but I'm taking it in. And if you start to think about, we've all had successes. Yeah. Whether it's, I see Joe's been chiming in, and, Joe is very near and dear to my heart. And I saw him say something about his new relationship, and he's definitely done well in free agency. Okay. I know Tia, and she's so far above his level, so he's done very well. And I'm proud of him and their beautiful babies. But I know what Joe's been through, because I've had 20, 30-year relationship of being in Joe's life, and I've seen, what he's gone through to get where he's at today. But I've also seen so many wins, right? And you have to remember the wins. Now he just chimed in truth. I know James the third is on today, and sometimes we say, where have I succeeded? Right? It's easy to talk about the failures, right? And you have to deal with them. But here's somebody that's won championships or has graduated and has a bachelor's degree, and you're doing things that are wins, right? So some of the things that I will put out there are ways of dealing with failure. And I'll kind of close on this note. Now I'll let you shut us down. But I know that for me, dealing with failure was tough because I wasn't recognizing that I had a lot of irrational beliefs.
Okay.
Right. It took me a while to realize that, you know what, I'm probably not going to be the next running back for the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay.
Now, am I a failure because, I wasn't the next Tony Dorsett and Herschel Walker? That's an irrational belief, right? That wasn't going to happen. Another thing for me, and this is a big thing with some of the things that I deal with emotionally, and as I walk through my journey of improving my mental health, is releasing that need for approval. Right? Because one thing that I always deal with, I want to be the good guy.
Okay.
For everybody, even the people that I don't need to be the good guy for.
Yeah.
Right. So to my kids, to my employees, to the lady in my life, to the ex-ladies in my life, I always need everybody's approval. You have to release that need for approval, or else you'll never be able to deal with the approval. Another thing is accepting responsibility.
Yeah.
Right. You got to be able to say, I did it. I screwed it up. My bad. I hate that term, my bad. But now I'm ready to do something to fix it. Can't take everything personally. You can't channel the negative emotion.
Okay.
You got to figure out how to, again, you have to accept it, but you can't just carry that bag around. So a couple things is, there's adopting some stress management skills, finding some inspiration, not giving up, having some passion. And the thing that I struggle with the most, and last but certainly not least, is you got to avoid that isolation, right? And that's bad, right? And I do that physically. I do it emotionally. I'm the shutdown guy. I'm not going to argue with you, so I'm going to shut down. It's terrible.
Yeah.
There's something I'm doing. But, dealing with failure, everybody deals with failure.
Yeah.
Whether it's weight loss, where it's not being the person that you always thought you would be, you got to manage it, right? But you got to be willing to pivot. It's okay to come up with new goals.
Yeah.
It's okay to stop back. Hell, Donald Trump just wanted to be a good businessman. Hell, he became the president. And might be the president again. Who knew?
Yeah.
Like, who would have thought? So I know I've talked a lot today, more than usual. This is an important topic. It's an important topic to me. I know that I use this platform very selfishly because I'm trying to get better, and so I love that we talk about real life incidents and situations. But why don't you close us out?
I mean, you done an amazing job today. I would, because most of those things are pretty universal into our personal or professional life. Like I said, I think that if you're in the middle of your storm, if you see it coming, or if you just got out of it, acknowledging it is okay. You don't have to act like the boat's not taking on water because of ego.
Oh yeah.
You've got the boats, you got you're knee deep in the water, but your ego's not letting you acknowledge that you're taking on water.
That's so dangerous.
Yeah. You're sleeping in separate rooms, but your ego's not acknowledging that there's a fracture in this relationship. Your savings are dwindling, but you're not acknowledging that whatever I'm doing financially is not working.
Right.
So getting out of the ego aspect of acknowledging, okay, whatever I'm doing, something's happening. Whether I'm in the middle of the storm, it's the process. I'm not fully recovered from it, or I may not be as prepared for it as I thought I was. Acknowledging that is okay. Not having the judgment on if I should have been better prepared, if I should have handled it better, or if I should have done this move. Being able to let that go and just acknowledge, if I should have had my umbrella or not, I'm getting rained on. So the should is very irrelevant at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
The rain stopped. I'm soaking wet. I should have brought my. okay, well, regardless if I should or shouldn't have, where am I at?
That's
And
right.
and
What do
so
we do now?
yeah. And so acknowledging wherever we are with whatever the situation is that, okay, we're here. So let me get out of my own way to make decisions to help me get out of it. And that things may not be our fault, but they are our responsibility. And so it may not be our fault that we're here, but taking ownership of it is not a burden. That when we take ownership of it, it's a blessing, because then we're not stuck in the hole waiting for somebody to pull us out. We're in the hole with the shovel to dig ourselves out.
Yeah.
So it may not be our fault that we're in there, but when we get in the driver's seat, we're saying, okay, I'm going to make some steps towards getting myself out, and allowing ourselves that washover of failure. Like go on and take it in. Take that one on the chin, go home, put some ice on it, and then come back tomorrow. But acting like you didn't get knocked out will only have you walking around disorientated.
That's right.
Go ahead, sit down. Take the knee. You know, old Mike Tyson's punch out after you got beat, or start training to make a comeback. Like, just go ahead, take this L, hold this L, and then regroup, getting new information, getting around people. If it's in the relationship dynamic, I do agree with you. I think a lot of marriages failed because people gave up too quickly. Because we could only build and fix and repair with the tools that we had. And instead of going to the hardware store, we went to the luggage shop and just got a new suitcase and bounced.
Wow.
And so
wow.
I got a screwdriver and a wrench, and I couldn't fix it with these tools.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it would have been better served you to go to Ace than it did go to Macy's. So instead of buying a new suitcase, go on and get you a hammer, some socket sets, and some new tools. But all those things, and I think this is a great conversation, because we all fail in something.
Yeah.
I think there's some good takeaways for people, and I appreciate the people who chimed in and contributed.
Yeah, I think this has been one of the best shows we've done. I've enjoyed it. I certainly appreciate everybody that chimed in and some of the comments. Again, you have to allow yourself and the people around you the freedom to fail. Yeah. You can't dwell on them. Yeah. You have to learn from them. Yeah. And then you just got to move forward. So I certainly, I certainly appreciate everybody that's chimed in. Joe, thank you for joining, and tell the little ones that Papa said hello. James III, I appreciate you joining in. And hey, Jermaine, this is another great show. Yeah. They're getting better. Hopefully we help somebody. And again, selfishly, I appreciate the free therapy. And we'll connect. So, hey, that's the end of the show this week. Again, appreciate everybody that chimed in, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.